Hi, so this is kind of like a part two in brackets of my video that I did recently where I asked people to submit questions. I did get some questions after I did the video, and they were really, really good questions as well, so I thought I can't really not reply to them just now because the good one, the too good to leave alone. So the questions, what they put, I won't, I'll just do them step by step. First one, I've not written anything down, so this is literally off the cuff because I think you give your best answers if you don't think about it too much. So the first question they had was, "What are my top five creators from back in the day from when I was really, when I was collecting comics back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and so on?" And then the flip side to that question, "What are my top five creators now?" So I thought that's a wonderful question. It's one that it takes more than a few minutes to answer. So for top five creators back in the day, I'm going to split into two sections: my top five writers, and my top five artists. So writers from back in the day. First of all, one it's got to be John Wagner for Judge Dredd. Need to say more. Well, I would say John Wagner slash Alan Grant. And putting those two together because they did a lot of writing together as well. They did Strontium Dog, etc. And also, I would say another writer from back in the day is Marv Wolfman because he had he did one of my favourite teen books of all time, New Teen Titans, but he also did really good horror like Night Force and also Tomb of Dracula. And another writer from the 80s slash 90s and a bit earlier, Denny O'Neil. The Question is without doubt one of the best comics ever created. So I've got two more writers to go for. And then another writer, it's got to be Alan Moore. Come on. I've been a fan of Alan Moore before I even knew it was Alan Moore. I used to read, like I mentioned on my previous one, I read a series in a strip in Back of Sounds called Stars My Degradation, and he was the artist writer on that. So yeah, it's got to be Alan Moore. I've liked him since he started, really, without even realising it. And then my last one, so I've done John Wagner slash Alan Grant, um, Marv Wolfman. I'm getting brain farts. And then I did Alan Moore. You know what's scary is I'm not drunk. Oh, and I said Danny O'Neill as well, didn't I? So yes, I've got one more to do. Oh god, that was embarrassing. Um, right, we're gonna go for the. This is when I didn't. I've liked this writer before I realised who he was. I used to love the Defenders, but when a particular writer came on, that's when it got really weird and creative. Oh, this is hard because there's two. I'm going to say two. No, yeah, I'm going to give six writers. Fuck it. So, and it's because of the Defenders. So, one of them, Steve Gerber, the creator of Howard the Duck, and he did some fantastic runs on the Defenders. He did some really great stuff with Man Thing. Wonderful, wonderful writer. He was like, without him, I don't think you'd have Vertigo. He had that same kind of experimental side to his writing, but also because of Defenders and the 80s, Jim DeMatteis, Greenberg's Vampire blew me away. That was one of my favourite books from the 80s. And also Blood, a Tale, and he did Moonshadow, which Krikyo Hog has mentioned in one of his videos, which was just light years ahead of anything. And also, obviously, he did one of my favourite comics of all time, Justice League International with Keith Giffen. Chef's kiss, just wonderful. So that's my writers. Kind of gave myself an extra one there. For artists, I would say Gene Colan, and more so for it was more through his black and white work, what he did in horror mags and stuff like that. So Gene Colan, George Perez, Teen Titans obviously, John Byrne, Howard Chaykin for American Flag. Ooh. and oh god, it's got to be Carlos Esquera for Judge Dredd and Strontium Dog. But again, I'm going to throw. I did 6 for writers. I'm going to do 6 for artists. Mick Mann as well for Slain, and also he did a fantastic Judge Dredd. If you've never seen it, just Google Mick Mann, that which is spelled Mick McMahon, and his Judge Dredd. He created basically like the big boot version of Judge Dredd. So that's my artist from back in the day. Modern writers. First up, James Tynion IV blows me away each time he writes something. He's got such a perfect grasp of how to do good horror, and I love that about him. So yeah, James Tynion IV. A writer that not a lot of people sing praises of. Now, there's, like I said, 5 is very restrictive. So for ones in back in the day, I had a whole list in my head, but those are the ones that I think don't get enough love in some aspects. So James Tynion IV. Rob Williams. No, scrap that. Dan Abnett, but not for his Marvel or DC stuff, but for the stuff he's done on 2000 AD. It's just wonderful, just really, really cool. I urge everybody to read Lawless and Brink. They're just fantastic stories. So Dan Abnett. So I've done James Tynion IV, Dan Abnett, Jeff Lemire, I'm looking around my bookcases. Kelly Thompson, and Chris Condon. There we go. For artists, for modern artists, Jacob Phillips. I think I find his work more enjoyable even more than his dad's. And when he's teamed up with Chris Condon, their comics are just a league above a lot of other creators. Henry Flint, who does most of his work for DC, and I do recommend you Google him if you're not familiar with him. Nick Dragata, Hayden Sherman. The Absolutes are just giving us the cream, the top, the cream of the cream when it comes to artists. And so that's 4. See, have you noticed I've not mentioned Dan Mora because I think Dan Mora is very good, but I don't know. There's just something that makes me not appreciate it. I don't gush about him the same way as a lot of people do. I think he's good. I think he's really good. I'm going to say Danny Warren Johnson. He excites me in his art style. So that's my modern writers and artists. I can't remember what I said now, but that's what I said. And then the person who posted this thing, he also asked what comics from what I lost from my previous collections, because as I mentioned in my last one, I had to get rid of everything, but virtually everything what I had through divorce and just having no room. So what do I miss? Tell you what I miss. First of all, this is really easy. The old black and white Marvel magazines, the horror ones, the kung fu ones, Savage Sword Conan, Savage Tales. They were wonderful pulpy experiences, but this is good. Take me on this. I'm actually visualising in my head. The happiest time of my life was my family used to have in Lancashire. There's a bit called Pendle Hill, which is where back in the 1600s, they had some of the witch trials, um, and we had like a. My mum called it a chalet, but it was a shed. But it was on this top. It was at the top of Pendle Hill, so we had this huge hill what we had to go down. At the bottom of the hill, there's like this little, like food supply shop, and it had a spinning rack because we're talking like the 70s, early 80s here. And on the spinning rack, they had the Marvel black and white magazines. They were wonderful. I used to get the kung fu ones. That's where I first heard about things like the White Tiger and stuff like that, and Shang-Chi. And they had Doc Savage, Planet of the Apes, Conan. I was never allowed to get the horror ones because my mum and dad were Christian missionaries. So, but yeah, they brought many happy memories, and I also loved the old Treasury editions as well. I'm pleased that DC are now reprinting facsimiles of them, but they're a lot more expensive than they were back in the day. But they were another thing that always brought back happy memories of holidays. All my holidays were tied into buying treasure editions and buying these black and white magazines. And another thing I regret not having anymore, I don't think there's any value in them, but what was the guy? I think it's called Alan Class. And if you ever went to a seaside resort, there was always like these like little shops on the end of the pier where they had rock and windmills, windmills that would blow, and they also sold other things like that. But they also sold these magazines called like things like Strange Worlds and The Unknown. And it's like these little. They had about 60, 70 pages in, really cheap, black and white reprints of like classic Marvel, DC, Atlas comics from the 50s and 60s. So you had a real mishmash characters. You had you had the Thunder Agents in there, side by side with Fantastic Four, with some early Steve Ditko stuff, and they were wonderful. Another thing I do miss heavily, and I'm going to get the collection of this, is Dreadstar, Jim Starlin's Dreadstar. I also miss not having Almost Want Things in comic form. I had the full run. There's so many. I miss Nexus, even though Mike Barron's a complete dickhead now. I miss Mike Grell's Green Arrow. I miss having 2000 AD from the 80s and the 70s. I miss not having those anymore. Oh, there's so many. But yeah, I'm trying to think. Warrior magazine as well. That was another one that I was really passionate about. There's just too many to say. Night Force was another one. It was never really ones that were like big hot ones. Like I had Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen, and all that when they came out, but you can get those now. But it's stuff more like the comics that you can't get anymore. Badger, Whisper, American Flag, Grimjack, Scouts. There's numerous others. I am slowly getting some that I've, like I mentioned, Thriller a few times. But yeah. And the thing is though, even though it's with nostalgia, some of these are still, when I've looked them online, they've still stood the test of time. But yeah, there's so many. So yeah, that's it really. So hope you enjoy that. Bit of a waffle, but I just thought they were really fun questions, really good creative questions. Okay, bye.